Hello and welcome to Season 1, Episode 1 of Today in Gaming Yesterday. I am Emma Pearl. You can call me EP. You can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/Emma Pearl here. You can find me streaming on Twitch at least 3 days a week, twitch.tv/Emma Pearl. You can find this podcast at twitter.com/TIGYpod. Once again, it is called Today in Gaming Yesterday. And this first episode of the first season is going to cover January 2000. Our first season is going to be all about the year 2000. So get stoked. Incredible year. Awesome year for gaming. Really fun year for gaming rumors, I've noticed. A lot of really good gaming rumors hitting this episode today. And episode 1 is January. I was living in Florida at the time, so I was not that cold. I might have been cold, but I wasn't as cold as I could have been if I lived somewhere actually cold. I'm trying to think of what I got for Christmas that year. I might have still been on my Lego grind, but it's hard to say. It's absolutely hard to say. The timeline of that time period of my life is so muddy for some reason. I knew that I liked video games, though. That was true. It was very important to me to have cool hobbies like that, and video gaming was it, dog. Enough about my nonsense. Let me give a couple of thank yous before we get started today. This is going to be like across the entire podcast. I want to thank these two websites in particular, but especially for this one today, I want to thank retromags.com and retrocdn.com. Really good resources for retro gaming magazines. Full scans, lots of information, so much good stuff there. I want to give my sincerest thank you. Check those places out. Give them your money. Give them your support. If you have old video game publications that you would like to scan and upload and make available to other people, check out these sites. They're doing incredible work. So thank you. For January 2000, I will say that I'm going to mostly dig into GamePro magazine and Nintendo Power. Those were two that I mentioned this in the intro. If you let me, I could talk about this topic forever, and I could use about 5,000 million different resources because I just love this stuff. I love digging in. I love connecting the dots and finding things. So I did not want to stress y'all out with the most amount of information I could possibly find about January 2000. Maybe once we get to like 04, you'll be like, wow, EP, that was very intense and very thorough and covered 500,000 sources, but that's not going to be today. There's still plenty of content here. I want to make sure to dig into everything we're thinking about. And then, I want to give this a try. I have a little feature at the end, something that I've been thinking about, something that felt relevant to me as I went through these magazines and kind of the thoughts I was having about the time period, myself growing up in this environment, what seemed most relevant. So we will dig into that feature at the end. But as of today and as of right now, let's start with January 2000's top 10 best-selling video games. So I actually got this information from GamePro. They publish it later, so I feel very fortunate that I have the ability to time travel in this way. I looked at GamePro from May 2000 to see what sold the best in January 2000. So the top 10 best-selling games January 2000, according to GamePro magazine in May 2000. Number 1 was Gran Turismo 2 on the PlayStation. Number 2, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater on the PlayStation. Number 3, Donkey Kong 64 on the N64. Number 4, Spyro the Dragon on PlayStation. Bias fully here, but obviously a great game. I could see it. Number 5, the OG Gran Turismo on PlayStation. Number 6, Crash Bandicoot Warped on PlayStation. Number 7, Medal of Honor on PlayStation. Number 8, Tomorrow Never Dies on PlayStation. Number 9, the Namco Museum 64. I believe that's a collection, right? On the N64. And the number 10 top-selling game in January 2000 was Super Smash Bros. On the N64. Obviously a ton of PlayStation. Like, as I look through the ratio there, it's mostly PlayStation stuff. I need to dig in to do a little bit more research. Like, is that just the volume overall of like N64s out there versus PlayStations out there? I would love to know and probably dig in and, I will say in this episode, there's going to be opportunities. If you love to dig in like me, if you love to do the math, I would love to have somebody help me with a giveaway that Nintendo Power was doing that I need to know how much it would cost now, just based on what they're giving away. So in addition to selling the games, I talked about this a little bit in the intro. I was one of those kids that my parents didn't want to buy me every game I wanted. And so we used to rent games from Blockbuster, which was sick. So these are indicated by Blockbuster and you know, you have to wonder how much of that is just straight up an advertisement. Blockbuster being like, hey, we have this game you can rent. Like, duh. We're gonna see, you know, how much that really shakes out, because we'll have access to the best-selling games as well as what they were recommending. So thinking ahead, EP, we love to see it. Blockbuster's January 2000 hot rentals, which they did dig out by platform, and this was in GamePro magazine from January 2000 towards the very end. And they gave more than the top 10, but I whittled it down to the top 10. So for the N64, Blockbuster was saying the top rentals are Toy Story 2, Donkey Kong 64, WrestleMania 2000, WWF WrestleMania, back before they were WWE, right? Love that so much. Number 4, Army Men, Sarge's Heroes, Ready to Rumble Boxing at number 5. Number 6, Knockout Kings 2000. Number 7, Jet Force Gemini. Number 8, Rainbow Six. Number 9, Turok Rage Wars. Am I saying that right? If I ever say something wrong, send me an email, tiguypod@gmail.com. Love to learn. Love to get better. And the number 10 game they're recommending for N64 for a hot rental is Battle Tanks Global Assault. There's a little bit of similarity when it comes to the PlayStation list. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis takes the top slot. Vigilante 8 Second Offense at number 2. Toy Story 2 number 3. Number 4 Tomorrow Never Dies. Number 5 GTA 2. I think I might own that now, maybe. I would like to play it. I own 3 for sure. I really want to try that out. And at number 6 is Crash Team Racing, CTR. Number 7, Army Men Air Attack. Number 8, Tomb Raider The Last Revelation, which, spoiler alert, GamePro loves to dig into in January 2000. Number 9, Medal of Honor. And number 10, Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage. So now I need to actively Google this, which I knew would happen while I was podcasting. Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage release date NA. I want to see when this came out in North America. It was released in November 1999 in North America. So, you know, when you look at the top 10 best-selling games total, it's interesting that Spyro the Dragon was number 4 on that when, you know, Blockbuster's like, hey, bestie, you wanna rent Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage? So very interesting stuff. So I talked a little bit about GamePro and what was happening there. Tomb Raider, the last revelation is the biggest feature, I would say, in terms of, like, obviously it's on the cover. They're really digging into it. There is Lara Croft right there with her cool circle sunglasses that now I would like to own. She's out there. She is dual wielding. She's ready to rock. Love that for her. She's great eyebrows. There's also a spooky skeleton, which is in a lot of the advertisements for this game as well. Love that. Love a spooky skeleton guy. Lara faces an ancient curse. Wow. GamePro issue 136, January 2000. $4.99 was the retail price in the US, $6.50 in Canada. I know you wanted to know. So the first thing we really dig into in this that I thought was the most interesting, there's obviously a ton of advertisements. So many advertisements. A really, really cool amount, all in different formats. And we'll dig in more into the advertising later in terms of what I really think about it. But I love to see a magazine and the first few pages you flip through are literally just cool advertisements for video games. I actually went to Barnes & Noble and I bought, there's not a ton of like hard copy video game magazines that are fully published and shipped out and sold in stores these days. I found a couple. They did not have nearly as much advertising. Because, you know, when you really think about it logically, right? Like, is the money in advertising best placed in a print magazine that I didn't know existed until I went to Barnes & Noble and bought it? And I like to consider myself someone that likes video games. Hard to say. So hard to say. So I really, really enjoyed that. I love that there's this huge team behind GamePro. I think that's so sick. Wooly Willy. There's a lot of really good stuff here. I have it pulled up on my monitor so I can take a peek at it. But, you know, the biggest feature is obviously Tomb Raider in there. But I kind of started, and what was most interesting to me to kind of dig into it first was letters to the editor. So the editor's letter on its own, like from the actual editor of the magazine, was kind of digging into, like, I have to imagine this was some kind of baiting, being like, whoa, is Lara Croft over? Is Tomb Raider over? Is this the last Tomb Raider game? Like, I have to think that this is just baiting, right? Like, a specific line from GamePro 2000, the GamePros, the editors. Lara, we love her, but write it down. 1999 will be remembered as the last year of Lara. Like, I don't know where that was coming from. Especially because I asked about this. Shout out to Gertch from my Twitch community who actually found this article for me. I was like, yo, when did they announce that they were making a live action Tomb Raider? When did they announce Angelina Jolie as Lara Croft? It looks like this was in April 2000. They were like, guess what, everybody? You'll love her in pixels, you're gonna love her on the big screen. Lara Croft. I was able to find also a lot of articles about like who they wanted. I think a lot of it was Wikipedia, who they wanted to be Lara. But I think Angelina Jolie seemed to do a good enough job. Will she fit the part? The article is a little bit, I mean, it is what it is for the time period. But yeah, maybe the fate of Tomb Raider was a little bit more murky and uncertain towards the earliest part of 2000. I just thought that was really interesting. Some of these letters are also really telling of the time period. Somebody wrote in and said, quote, Nintendo is doing pitifully, saying that they noticed that the N64 is pitiful. It's not very good, being outsold, outgamed, out everythinged by the 32-bit 4-year-old PlayStation. Like dunking, being like, the PlayStation's 4 years old and it's doing better than the N64. Ponder that orb. Saying that they're disappointed, that they think that they see it sharing the same fate as the Sega Saturn. Like the 64-bit there is not doing it for them. This is from someone named Newton Nicholson from Los Angeles. This felt like a gray area for me because, like I mentioned, this time period of my life was so murky in terms of what video game consoles I had and in what order I got them. I never had an N64 growing up. I got my first N64 last year, and now I love the N64. But I can kind of see it. I can kind of see how the PS1, even though, it's not the quote, I guess not technically, the 64-bit powerhouse that is the N64, there was a lot of good stuff happening on the PlayStation. And so my timeline was murky, and it feels later gen to me than the N64. I found it interesting that in this magazine too, GamePro refuses to just immediately be like, yo, the N64 sucks. Like, it seems like they're more willing to do that to Sega, which we'll dig into a little bit when they talk about the predictions that they have for the future. That's a really cool thing about the year 2000 is everybody got a little reflective, introspective. Introspective, I think, is probably the term I'm looking for. They all really wanted to think about the future. They wanted to look back and look forward. Those huge transition periods and those big like milestone dates often do that to us. So what a gold mine for looking back 20 plus years later, because you're like, ooh, you got predictions? I'm going to tell you if they were real or not. But yeah, there's a quote in here where it's like, comparing the N64 to the Saturn is nasty. Straight up. And they cite Donkey Kong 64 as a huge reason for that. There was another one here, which in my notes I have just the full quote, just as I thought it was so interesting. Girls will never be good at video games. They should stick to watching the Pokemon TV show or playing with dolls. We need to stop talking about girls versus guys, because the truth is that girls will never be truly excellent at video games. Here's why. Number 1, girls will stop halfway through a game to put on lipstick or something. Number 2, female characters in video games are never interesting. Number 3, girls play for fun, so they'll never be good gamers. Number 4, there must be a reason why you don't have a woman on your review crew. Number 5, I think girls that play video games are tomboys, don't have boyfriends, and have pathetic lives. Number 6, girls might break a nail while playing a fighting game and start whining. This was attributed to Jonathan Rizzo of Los Angeles, California. Their thoughts here were kind of just like dunking on this individual that wrote this. Here's a point by point response. Number 1, maybe it wouldn't hurt for you to take a look in the mirror every once in a while too. Number 2, they list the female characters of video games that are interesting, including like Samus, Lara Croft, Claire Redfield, like good stuff. Number 3, if you're not having fun while you play video games, why play at all? Which is an interesting response to girls play video games for fun so they can't be good. I feel like you can play a video game for fun and be good at it. Like, am I soggy? I feel like I follow a lot of Twitch streamers who have fun and are also good, but who knows what was going on in 1999. They also dunk on the fact that this person did not pay attention to the fact that there is a woman on their review crew who I will talk more about later. Misspell, like Miss, M-I-S-S, spell, S-P-E-L-L. I want to dig into this more later. I cannot find Misspell anywhere. I cannot find information. I would love to, Miss Bell, if you're somehow listening or viewing this somehow, I would love to talk to you about your experience in GamePro. I would love to talk to you about your experience in video games. Please reach out to me if you are somehow reading or watching or listening to this. TIGOIpod@gmail.com. So cool. So rad. And yeah, they go through the other points. And this letter makes me wonder how fake some of these letters are, but also the fact that they kind of try to get at GamePro while being like, y'all don't have a woman. They were wrong, obviously, but they're trying to like dig into the magazine as part of the problem, which sounds like they may not have been in this context. So yeah, I always wonder that. I'm like, are the letters to the editor real in these? Because you just do it for the content. People were doing that back in the day. There's another interesting letter about PlayStation 2 rumors. Because, the PlayStation didn't come out for a minute. And so someone's asking, like, hey, should I buy a DVD player or should I wait for the PS2? Which I love. I kind of want to use my PS2 as a DVD player, but I'm having such quality issues with my PS2 through an HDMI adapter plugged into my giant TV, 65 inches. There's got to be a better way, like an actual DVD player with less need for adapters. All I do is adapt, though. Like, as a retro gamer and streamer, I have a lot of adapter experience and knowledge. I don't know everything, but I know enough to make it work. I have my entire video game collection behind me, and I have various adapters because, I go in through my capture card. And when I stream on Twitch, I try my best to use the original hardware just because it's something that I have access to, and I think it's fun. So, yeah, maybe not the best for my DVD player woes. I have the best of Will Ferrell from SNL on DVD, and I just want to watch it with some mild quality for once. Another letter the editor writes in saying they're sad the PS1 doesn't have any 2D side-scrolling shoot-'em-ups, which I think about occasionally too. Mario 64, in my mind, is this huge mental shift around like how I felt the quote right or main way to approach a world is. And it all is obviously very 3D. Which sometimes you just want 2D. Like, did anybody ever play Heli Attack 2 on Miniclip? Like the Flash game? So good. I'm actually doing a Y2K stream as a charity incentive. And I want to see if I can find any of those old Flash games I used to spend a lot of time playing. Like Heli Attack 2. 3D games are just kind of overwhelming for me sometimes. I don't know if I'll ever be able to play Skyrim just because I feel like I'm going to get overwhelmed. Console wars drama is also absolutely happening in these letters to the editors. You'll love to see it. Poor Chris from Elizabethtown, Kentucky, is getting roasted by his classmates for thinking that the Nintendo Dolphin sounds better than the PS2, which I just read a very interesting book. Once again, I really need to look up the titles for the books that I read. I should look this up ahead of time because I knew I was going to want to talk about this. It is called Super Mario, How Nintendo Conquered America. It is written by Jeff Ryan. I'm mostly done with it now. And for me personally, the way I interpreted a lot of this book and a lot of this time period in terms of like PS2 versus Dolphin, which a lot of us know ends up being the GameCube, they obviously weren't comparable. Like one was beefier. The PS2 was pretty beefy compared to the Dolphin, the GameCube. Like, it wasn't comparable in that way. And so it was interesting to kind of, we have this context now. We didn't have this context in the 2000s at the time of this, how Nintendo was able to pivot with the Wii and really what that looked like for them, what that did for the industry, what it did for Nintendo, and how it kind of solidified their place in the video game industry as a contender, but in a completely different way than something like a PS3 or an Xbox 360. Love it. Love to think about these things. Love your thoughts on it too. If you have hot takes on this or your own personal lived experiences for these things, hit a girl up because I love it. I think there's like an industry news section. There's also a lot of like fan art that's submitted. I'm going to do a tweet that will accompany this episode with just some screenshots, some things that I think are interesting. So there's definitely going to be one of those here. The fan art's great, but there's some fan art that I found very interesting and funny, so I'll include that when I tweet about the episode and some of the episode pictures for this. There's industry news and theories and drama that I think is interesting and cool, specifically about the Xbox, because as of January 2000, they were still like not talking about the Xbox in the way that that they could have. They weren't really responding to the rumors. They being Microsoft, by the way, in case you didn't know, Microsoft is behind the Xbox. They weren't commenting about the rumors. They were not saying things. Wall Street Journal allegedly said in October that they're like, hey, this Microsoft console is just going to run PC games. Wild. This direct quote I found interesting. One of the most pertinent questions has to be whether or not the market can support 4 different consoles. More in this too. Traditionally, no matter how many companies have released systems, game console wars have whittled down to 2 main competitors. Atari and Intellivision, Sony and Sega, Sony and Nintendo, like from each era. It would be the 4th company to make a bid during the next phase, fighting Dreamcast, PS2, and Dolphin. It's just wild to me that we really have kind of transformed in the console realm to it's not just two head to head. Like, obviously the giants are still going to see it through. We're seeing that everywhere. Even with like streaming video games now, we see that in the year 2022 that it really is kind of the big heavy hitters that can make it happen. But yeah, they it's interesting to think that they didn't think the Xbox could make it just because of competition. I guess not realizing that, you know, I would love to see some statistics too, like more people playing video games and what that did to the market. More people my age or even a little bit older than me getting access to money and buying those things, getting into it. Will they announce it at CES in January 2000? They did not. Spoiler alert for CES happening this month for season 1 episode of Today in Gaming Yesterday. They do not announce the Xbox at CES. Also, more industry trends that were interesting. A lot of Game Boys were sold. I talked about this a little bit earlier. They have the data. 2.68 million Game Boys were sold between January and August 1999. The entirety of 1998, they sold 2.43 million. So this is January through August, not even including the holiday season. That's a freaking lot of Game Boys, dude. Like, Nintendo knew what they were doing. And there's actually, I found this online too. There is a handheld special edition, like winter volume of GamePro that I would love to dig in. Maybe I'll do it as like a bonus episode someday, where it talks about like the competitors in the handheld gaming market and how even at the time they're like, dog, Game Boy, this is it. The Game Boy's it. And I kind of loved that. I thought it was really interesting. Obviously, cover story, Tomb Raider, they do a lot of stuff about that. There was a prediction section. I talked about this earlier. There's predictions about, you know, the future of gaming and what that really looks like. And it came from a lot of the GamePro editors, which I thought was really sick. So each of their little editors who have their own fun little nicknames, I think this is so cool. For it being the end of 1999, they had their own predictions. One of my favorites was from somebody named Air Hendricks. Quote, Sony and Nintendo will continue to dominate console gaming while Sega will survive the system wars, but as a PlayStation 2 and PC publisher. It's so wild and interesting because in my mind, when I think of Sega, I see so much parallel and so much moving those games and those ideas onto Nintendo. So, you know, these folks have been in the industry. They're thinking about it. They know a lot more than I probably do in this way. Major Mike kind of agreed with Air Hendricks in this way. But Major Mike, if you are listening to this, I'm so sorry to say that your take on Pokemon was just not it. A little bit of a bad take. Quote, Sega won't drop off the face of the earth. The company will stick around, but as a third-party software developer for Nintendo's Dolphin and Sony's PlayStation 2. The Pokemon craze will go the way of the Tamagotchi. Bestie, please. But the Game Boy Color will continue to be the handheld gaming system of choice. So true, but come on. Pokemon's in. At least it's in my life in the form of 2 tattoos. My arm is so sore. I did a lot of Wii Fit and a lot of Wii Sports yesterday, and I'm feeling it. I'm so into Wii Fit right now. I never had a balance board growing up. Whew, that thing's fun. I've been streaming it on Twitch too, twitch.tv/EmmaPearl if you ever want to check it out. I stream all my retro stuff. But I digress. We are losing focus on the important predictions for the new millennium. Miss Spell has probably my favorite take in this whole magazine. And once again, Miss Spell, please, I would love to talk to you. Your take here is so good, and I'm so interested in your experiences with this. Miss Spell says, quote, we're going to see a lot more games break out of existing genres to create new ones. Innovative, unusual games like Guitar Freaks and The Sims are already leading the way. Also, girl gamers are going to be heard. Absolutely. Miss Spell, like, round of applause for Miss Spell. Crushing it. I love it. I think that's so sick. A lot of my main takeaways, though, from overarching, you know, there's takeaways and guesses and predictions from every editor, but it's wild to me that folks were already done with the Dreamcast. Like, the Dreamcast was released on 9/9/99, marketing megastorm of releasing it in North America on 9/9/99. And folks were already done with it. It had been like 3 months. And folks were like, Dreamcast? I don't know her. And that's wild to me. Super wild. Like, how was the writing already on the wall? If you have access to articles, if you have information about this, I would love to know what led to the rapid demise of the Dreamcast, especially in North America. It had just come out and folks were done. Bananas. In this issue of GamePro from January 2000, they had some previews for some games. Resident Evil Code Veronica feature. They targeted the release date of March 2000 on the Dreamcast, and it was released in February, so GG's to them. This game looks so good. I have a Dreamcast. I really want to reshell it before I dig into it. I've never actually played it. I want to do a playthrough of all the Resident Evil games personally, just because I know there's so much value there. Like, they have a lot of lore. They bring a lot to the gaming world. I would love to dig in. I just got the Resident Evil 1 remake that's on GameCube. I'll have to give it a try. They featured a game called Fear Effect with a target release date of February 2000, released right on time. Gorgeous, perfect. It kind of looks sick based on the plot, is what I was reading through and was most interested in. Fear Effect. It's a anime style 3D adventure, a rich storyline with intense action. And it's on 4 discs, which is something that I am so obsessed with. Like, the fact that on a PlayStation, they would just release all these discs for a game because, you know, they couldn't fit it all on one. I love that. I don't even think I have a 4-disc game in my collection. And so I consider this a late-stage PS1 game. Some of these huge ones that have these multi-discs, I need more in my collection. And this one, I did an eBay check, only $30 on eBay. They also previewed a game called Shadow Man that I thought looked so interesting and so rad. They previewed it for the Dreamcast, which I am into and I would like to play. I'd never heard of this game before, and I just thought it looked so cool. I think I could pick it up on either one. I would love to do a full playthrough of this. I think I can pick it up on Dreamcast for like 30 to 40 bucks. Not bad at all. Love that. Another game that came up that I thought was interesting was, I think it's pronounced Daikatana 64, which for me growing up, the N64 was not a first-person shooter console to me. It all felt like party games and Zelda. Like, that was the N64 to me in my mind when I was growing up. I had no idea there was such a deep first-person shooter repository to dig into. For me personally, the first-person shooter I ever actually tried to play and like get better at was Half-Life on the PC, which I played on stream for the first time. I want to say like December 2000. That was one of the first, 2020. That was one of the first games I played through and completed on stream. And like, I super am into the genre now, but I, of course, am like biased. I love the ones from the early 2000s. So I kind of want to check out these N64 ones. This game is actually kind of expensive on eBay, complete in box, meaning it, you know, may not be sealed, but it has all the components, the box, the manual, everything is $800. But just the cart is even $100, which is, you know, that's expensive for a game. Not like mega expensive, not like I probably would never buy that, but definitely one that, you know, I would have to think about before I just buy it on a whim. They did even more reviews going by the console. One that they reviewed that I actually love and think is sick and would like to get is Wu-Tang Shaolin Style. I'm usually not into like fighter games, but I like it. It scored decently average. For each of these pro reviews, they do like a review out of 5. Like this one had above a 4.0 average, which is pretty sick. I love this, and I think it's really cool. I'm really into it. This game looks great. 3 new and exclusive Wu-Tang Clan songs highlight the soundtrack. Like, yes, I'm super in. If anybody plays Fortnite, they released Wu-Tang items in the Fortnite shop, and they got me, dog. They got me. They're like, you know who needs to buy some more stuff in the Fortnite item shop? 30-year-olds. So let's release some Wu-Tang stuff. So I really want this game. I don't think it's that expensive on eBay. I actually don't think I looked it up. But I want it. And I also want Thrasher, Skate, and Destroy. I talked a little bit about how I'm like mega into Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. But I think that this Thrasher one seems interesting because it seems like a little bit more realistic than Tony Hawk, because in Tony Hawk you go super high. The physics are a little bit bonkers, like manageable but a little bonkers. And also in Thrasher you can break your board after a while. And so a piece of me is like, yo, like, why did this game not persist as much as Tony Hawk? Like, is it because Tony Hawk 1 was just so good and Tony Hawk 2 was so good? I also wondered if like realistic physics were turning people off, because like it's kind of more fun. Like when you play SSX Tricky on GameCube, which I play all the time, I freaking love that game. You're not like, wow, I got 1 foot of air. You're like, look how much air I got. Look at how high and these wild tricks that I'm doing that are not actually possible. There's something to be said about that, like suspending the reality of a skateboarding game. And maybe Thrasher was just too real. Also, there is an ad in here for a game that I want, that I actually think would be sick, to use this game to make the theme song of this podcast. Bear with me. The game is called MTV Music Generator, music creation for the PlayStation. You can combine instrument sounds. You can make your own music videos. I think that this seems sick. I need to like dig into the fine print and be like, yo, can I use this for my own purposes? Because I doubt in the year 2000 whenever they were releasing this game, they're like, man, I bet some 30-year-old woman is starting a early 2000s gaming podcast. We should really write in something for the theme song she wants to make using our MTV Music Generator for PlayStation 1. We should really be explicit about if she can do that or not. Homemade jams. It sounds so good. I want it. I want it so bad. They also talk about they talk about an X-Files game, which looks good, but I looked up the aggregate scores on Wikipedia, and it's not that good. It kind of bums me out. I really, really want it to be good. I love X-Files, even though the theme song does give me nightmares. And the theme video with the face that moves, I'm giving myself an active nightmare right now. When you're awake, is it a nightmare or is it just like a scary thought? Either way, whatever it is, I'm having it, and it is scary, and I wish the game was better. They do a lot of N64 reviews too. Obviously, DK64 is like the biggest hit of the day, which I actually got gifted to me. Thank you again, Thick Delicious from Twitch, my wonderful Twitch community. Thank you for sending me this game. I'm gonna have to try it out. I'm really excited. I love, I think it's my first N64 game with a different colored cartridge too. It's a yellow cartridge. And I've never played N64 with another person, which is so sad because I've heard that GoldenEye multiplayer is like what makes it for people, but I've never played with another person. They talk about Turok Rage Wars here, which I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It has incredible reviews. And then I actually was like, yo, the reviews on this are so good. It looks so fun. Let's do an eBay check. And that is where I dug into my first real wormhole of this podcast, which I'm so stoked to tell you all about because I love stuff like this. So in my eBay check, I noticed that there were 2 variants for the cartridge. There was a black cartridge, which ranged for $20, maybe $10. And then there is a gray cartridge for this game, Turok Rage Wars. The gray cartridge is kind of wild. It sells for maybe $1,000, $700 to $1,000 on eBay. I looked into this. I wanted to know why. I love this kind of stuff. A Reddit commenter with a name that I'm not going to say on this podcast said they made the gray cartridges to fix a bug in the original version where you couldn't beat the campaign in the co-op mode. You had to mail in your original copy, and then they would send you a gray cart with an updated ROM. And, you know, an important distinction is this is only rare for the NTSC version and not the PAL version. I found a CBR.com article written by Zach Millsap, which dug into this more. Acclaim was getting these angry emails, angry letters from gamers that are like, yo, I cannot beat the campaign. This is BS. You need to fix this game. But they decided to keep the issue a little bit under wraps. They didn't really talk about it. They just said, hey, if you send us your cartridge, Angry Gamer, we will send you an updated one that is not bugged. So they did that. So gray cartridges that you see for Turok Rage Wars that are the NTSC version and not the PAL version, meaning like the North American style one, those are pretty rare, dude. Because you had to be an angry gamer and you had to mail in your cartridge for them to send you an updated one, which I think is so sick, so wonderful. If you ever hear me talk about a game and you know of something like this that's happening for it, for the love of Pete, tell me. I love to geek out on this stuff. I think it's so sick. Just the human elements of video games and culture and what happened in the past gets me every time. I think that's sick. So the strategy guides that they had in this issue, they had 2 big strategy guides for multiple games, both of them PlayStation, in this episode of GamePro from January 2000. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis looks so good, and the pro strategy guide is so thorough. Like, maps, everything. It was 16 pages total. I counted. Maps, screenshots, everything. The other strategy guide they had was for Medal of Honor for PlayStation. And I wondered, I'm like, wow, there's so much PlayStation stuff. And I'm like, yo, like we heard the top 10 list earlier. Most of the top 10 games that were being sold right now were for PlayStation. Plus, Nintendo Power existed. If folks were going to go for a pro strategy guide, I don't think they were going to buy GamePro. They were probably going to go to Nintendo Power, which is a pretty good segue to the fact that I want to talk about Nintendo Power from the year 2000, specifically the month of January. But they did, at the very end of this, have an advertisement for something that I would like to own because it's a gorgeous translucent case, and I think it's cool. It's called a Sharkwire Online for the N64, which, like, connected you to a web browser moment. And I think that's so sick. And I want one, and I know it wouldn't work, but I still want it. And that is my most toxic trait. Before we dig into Nintendo Power, the N64, all of that stuff that was happening in January 2000, I think let's take a little bit of a break. So I'm going to take a quick break. I will be right back. Welcome back to Today in Gaming Yesterday with me, Emma Pearl, EP here, bringing you now Nintendo Power from January 2000. Noted by Nintendo Power as the biggest bonus issue ever. The cover story for this one is Mario Party 2, which is a great game. Not as good as Mario Party 3. I'll say it. I have a definitive ranking of my own Mario Party games that I own. The only one that I don't own is the one that came out for Switch that, like, wasn't as good. And also Mario Party 4. I don't know why I don't have Mario Party 4. I set my collection goal in the year 2021 to own all the Mario Party games. Maybe I'll find 4 at Classic Game Fest, which is a genuine plug and tie-in. I will be at Classic Game Fest as a creator the end of July 2022 when I'm recording this. It's the weekend of July 23rd and 24th. Get your passes online. I will be there. I'll have a booth. You can say hi. You can stop by. I want to have no spoilies on the booth, but I do want to have a sick booth. And there's so much good stuff to enjoy there. The vendors at Classic Game Fest are incredible, not only for buying and trading video games, but also really cool vendors that sell art, sell really cool things that they make, cool crafting stuff. I got some really sick keychains. I have really cool Pokemon card coasters that I got at Classic Game Fest last year. I do recommend stopping by if you're in Texas. It is the biggest retro gaming convention in Texas, and I am so excited to be there. Come stop by. Say hey. It'll be really sick. It's in a few weeks. I'll see you there, okay? It's going to be sick. ClassicGameFest.com. Check it out. So, Nintendo Power Roundup. The biggest thing that stood out to me when I opened this magazine, it's the 3rd page in. They had the cover. I think it was actually an extended cover, so it was the 1st page in, dude. A Millennium 2000 N64 controller. This thing is beautiful. I'll include a picture of it in the episode guide. So they have a picture of this gorgeous N64 controller. It is silver all the way around. All of the buttons are black except for the start button, which is red. And it's a subscriber-only bonus issue giveaway. There are only 1,000 of these controllers. So you know, I had to look it up on eBay. I had to see if I could find one and see how much it costs. I found one on eBay. Has the bag. It's never been used. It's great condition. Gorgeous. It's only a cool $7,500, of course. I chose to watch it on eBay like I do with many things that I'm not actually going to purchase, but I want to know the status of them long term. And I'm thrilled to let you know that the seller sent me a private offer of like $800 off. Still probably not going to buy that one, but I do appreciate it. They also have another giveaway happening for a banana pack, which included Nintendo Power for a year, I think. And you'd also get a Donkey Kong 64 player's guide. And you could, yes, if you called in, credit card orders only, people, no checks, you could get the N64 controller too, which is yellow Oh my God, I just realized that the ends of the controller, so picture in your mind with me, picture in your mind an N64 controller. It has those 3 sticks. The ends of the grips they look like bananas. So it looks like the whole thing is just one very malformed, intense looking banana. Wow, what a controller. I found one on eBay. It was only LOL, only $300. Let's go. Probably still not going to buy that one, but I thought it was cool. The letters to the editor for Nintendo Power are so wonderful. They call it the player's pulse. They being the editors of Nintendo Power, had to put a specific thing in this magazine telling people that, so many people had written in to the editor saying, hey, I rotated the control stick so hard on my N64 playing Mario Party that I burned my hand. They say there, please do not do that. Use your finger, use 2 fingers, whatever you do not use your hand. This is a tale as old as time. If y'all have played the newest release of Mario Party that's on the Switch, where you can play all the old ones, they literally warn you, and they're like, yo, do not use the palm of your hand. You may burn yourself. 20 years later, no one will ever learn. And I am going to incriminate myself with this. I never learn. I am one of those people. I also use my hand. But I don't write letters to the editor about it, so that's how nobody knows. But I guess I did just talk about it on a podcast that is on the internet forever, so dang. I also learned from this letter to the editor that Pokemon was featured on an episode of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire in November 1999. This was the question for $500,000. Which of these is not a Pokemon? A, Jigglypuff. B, Frodo. C, Pikachu. D, Squirtle. This question was worth $500,000 on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire in 1999, November. The individual used the 50-50 lifeline, and the only 2 options left were Jigglypuff and Frodo. They still didn't know which one, backed out. They took the money they had made. They did not feel confident enough in distinguishing between Frodo and Jigglypuff to get that $500,000, which I feel like at the time probably made more Lord of the Rings people mad than Pokemon people. Let's be real. Because I feel like I like Lord of the Rings. I wouldn't call myself like a super stan, but I'm into it. I think it's cool. I think, obviously I have the nerd context, but very interesting that, it just wasn't there for this person. Kind of a bummer. In Nintendo Power, they do a huge feature on Mario Party 2. Obviously, it's the cover game. They talk a lot about it. It's so funny because we were just talking about the rotating stick hand situation. In Mario Party 2, they removed any mini game that could have that because they're like, you're not going to burn your hand. It's not going to happen. Well, we saw how that worked out for them. Also, I learned, too, from this feature that Mario Party 2 is the origin of the Spaceland board, which I really, really, really enjoy on the Mario Party Superstars, I believe it's called, for the Switch. Great board. Excellent board. As I mentioned, flipping to a new century, flipping to a new millennium makes everybody a little nostalgic and also forward thinking. And so there are predictions that happen for the year 2000, as well as 1999 in review. So I wanted to share with you these insights. And also, if you hear a small grunting noise, I do have my dog in my lap while I'm doing this podcast. His name is Guy Fieri. He is a senior Chihuahua that I adopted from the animal shelter a few months ago. He loves to sit in my lap while I game here, and so he's going to be our little podcast buddy. So if you hear grunting, if you hear a bell ringing, it is simply my tiny dog. He's here with me today. So in the 1999 review, they talk a lot about scary N64 games, which I talked about earlier. N64 for me was like party games and Zelda. It's so interesting that there's all these scary games. There's these first-person shooter games. That was never in my sphere of consciousness for the N64, so I love it. They had a questions section, which I thought was cool. What comes after the Game Boy Color? Which obviously Nintendo knows, but I love having these like condensed versions of what they're going to share being through this format of Nintendo Power. So they talk about, the Game Boy Advance is going to be 32-bit. internet connectivity, a gaming website compatible. Of course, I dug into this rabbit hole. You can buy a wireless adapter, but the wireless adapter is more so to replace the link cable and less for internet capabilities. So stinks. Don't love it. I found an Extreme Tech article from 2003 about a Bluetooth module from a company called Extra Fun, X-TRA Fun. It looks like it didn't actually happen, though. This seems different from what Nintendo Power is talking about, though. Like, the fact that they bring this up, like, internet connectivity in this format. I mean, it plugs into the GameCube, but was, like, the internet connectivity there for that? It doesn't feel that way to me. And it's interesting, the only real big thing I could find of it was that third-party piece. I dug further into this, of course, and I found that at GDC in 2009, Masato Kuwahara, if I said that name wrong, let me know. I want to say it better and I want to say it right, who is the project lead for the DSi at the time, they shared images of unreleased handhelds from Nintendo. So I'm going to include one of these pictures in the episode guide. They included the Game Boy Advance predecessor from 1995, where they were trying to get that 32-bit right. It basically just looks like a really chonky Game Boy Color. So we really got lucky with our gorgeous Game Boy Advance shape that we have now. The little, what's the best way to describe it? Almost like a Hot Pocket. Like a futuristic Hot Pocket, sideways shaped handheld. You'll love to see it. I also got into a major Game Boy Advance hole on Wikipedia looking into this. And now I would like to own Shrek 1 and Shrek 2 on Game Boy Advance because they made like full-length movies that you could watch on the Game Boy Advance. I think that my one wish in this world is to have Shrek 1 for Game Boy Advance, plug it into the Game Boy player that plugs into the GameCube, watch that on my computer via the capture card. Big dreams. I have big dreams, and that's what I want. Also, I'm going to post a picture, too, because, you know, when they talk about retrospective and looking at 1999, Pokemon were on the cover of Time magazine, and I just thought it was a really cool cover. I'll include that picture for the Twitter as well for the episode guide and what you're going to see. They have a gigantic Donkey Kong 64 guide in here, which I will be referencing if I do a playthrough. It's like a multi-part guide. It's so much. And I will say that Nintendo Power has a lot of really good guides. They're all very like gorgeously put together, like a really good combination of not just information about the games, but like cool screenshots and stills and like really fun stuff. Like I'm looking at one for a car racing game right now. And like at the bottom of the page, Roadsters. At the bottom of the page, they have like these gorgeous little like, ooh, screenshots from the game almost, but like additional art. And I just think that's so rad. What I found most rad, though, is that they have a gigantic section of Nintendo Power that is specifically devoted to Pokemon, which, yes, I'm in. You got me. I'm super in. I learned that the Game Boy Tower on Stadium, Pokemon Stadium for the N64, will let you play red, blue, or yellow on the screen like a Super Game Boy. Love that. That's so sick. I really want to dig into this later, too. If you have this information, hit a girl up. I want to know why there was that big gap between the Super Game Boy from Super Nintendo and then the Game Boy player for GameCube. I love it. I also learned there's an invisible PC in Celadon City. Gotta dig into that. I also went into a very interesting rabbit hole, which I was not able to find my way out of successfully, that talks about transferring Missing No to Pokemon Stadium. Obviously, Nintendo Power at the time, and every single message board I was able to find about, you know, Missing No and Pokemon from this era was like, don't you dare do Missing No. You're going to corrupt your whole game. It makes everything terrible. Don't do it. There was a really, really, really cool Missing No thread on pokecommunity.com. And it was huge. And I couldn't really find the answer to my question, though, which is like, had anybody tried to put Missing No in Pokemon Stadium? What happened? If you know about this, I searched, but I might not have searched as hard as other folks can search. Hit me up, tiguypod@gmail.com. I want to know. Also, I need to own this really cool piece of software called Pokemon Project Studio, where you can make signs, banners, keychains, cards, stickers, necklaces, stationery that you print out on your printer. I need to own it. And you can get, there's two versions, of course. You gotta collect them all. You gotta catch all the versions of Pokemon Studio. There's a red version and a blue version, and I can get both of them for $15. Why haven't I bought it already? Your guess is as good as mine. It's probably because I forgot that I wanted to. And that's on ADHD. They talk about Gold and Silver, which came out in October 2000 in the US, which I'm wondering if that's when I got Silver for Christmas, was that year. My Silver cartridge does have a dead battery, though, so you can't save the game. I need to learn how to solder so I can get in there and fix it. Yeah, great game. Great game. And I love that, you know, they talk about the fact that it was released in Japan already at this time, which is huge, and I think that's sick. So this section of the pod is where I really want a math person to do some good math, because there's a lot of math to be done, and I really want to know in modern times just how much this would be worth. So they were doing a giveaway for the Pokemon trading card game, which, you know, as we know now, is huge for collectors. So this is the grand prize pack that they were giving away. Here's all of it's a huge set of items. Base set 1, 2-player starter set, all 4 base set pre-constructed theme decks, Blackout, Zap, Overgrowth, and Bushfire. Fully sealed display box of base set boosters, which is 36 booster packs. Both jungle decks, Water Blast and Power Reserve. Full sealed display box of jungle set boosters, 36 packs. Both fossil decks, Bodyguard and Lockdown. Full sealed display box of fossil set boosters, 36 packs. Base set 2-player starter set with a Learn to Play CD-ROM, thank God. All 4 base set 2 pre-constructed theme decks, Grass Chopper, Hot Water, Lightning Bug, Psych Out. Fully sealed display box of base set 2 boosters and a binder, and the trading card game for Game Boy, of course. How much would that be worth? A streamer, Viner, leader of my stream team, neat dude, Chris Melberger. Check him out on Twitch, twitch.tv/Chris Melberger. He cracked open, I think, one of these sealed OG style boxes last summer as part of they ended up raising a ton of money for charity with it, I believe. Cracked open one of those boxes, and I think it was over $20,000 alone for just that box. So I'm so curious about the math of this. I want to know how much this prize pack would retail for today in the year 2022. If you do that math and you email me, tiguypod@gmail.com, you let me know. I will gift you a sub to my Twitch channel for 1 month. You deserve it. Let's go math. Other games that are featured here that I think are really cool and important is the game Dogz, D-O-G-Z, for the Game Boy Color. I really want this game. Only $20 on eBay. But they go on to talk about the January 2000 releases, and the highest rated release coming out on Nintendo consoles and handhelds is 40 Winks, which does look kind of interesting, and 8.0 out of 10. I am so sorry to say that the lowest rated game that they talk about is the aforementioned Dogz on the Game Boy Color, which is very painful to me personally. Had a 6.4 rating. Tomb Raider on the Game Boy Color also apparently exists. I really, really want that. I should probably try to buy that. Laura, you're cool. Hopefully I'll have better luck with the Game Boy Color version than the PS1 version of the original Tomb Raider, which was miserable and hard for me to play. The controls were rough. I thought this was interesting too. I did the math because they list all of the upcoming releases for the N64 and the Game Boy Color. In winter 99, so this time period, there were 21 N64 games coming out and 21 Game Boy Color games coming out. Spring 2000, they anticipated 12 N64 games and 8 Game Boy Color games. And in the, quote, future, who knows, 23 N64 games already on the release schedule, and 6 Game Boy Color games. I found this issue of Nintendo Power super duper good. Really good Pokemon features that kind of read the room, kind of read that the Hysteria was really digging in. The game guides are super good. And honestly, Nintendo is really good at making, you know, the whole thing's an advertisement, but really good at building out advertisements into these ridiculously meaty and good and well thought out features that have so much information that you're like, I do want to buy this game. And I love that. With that being said, we're going to take our second break of the episode. Once again, you're listening to Today in Gaming Yesterday with me, Emma Pearl, EP here. Let's take a quick break. And once we get back, we are going to dive into this month's deep dive, which will be about video game advertising. So stick around, keep it locked. I will see you in a little bit. Welcome back to Today in Gaming Yesterday with me, Emma Pearl. Excited to dig into this month's deep dive. This deep dive was actually sparked by a tweet I saw on the old twitter.com. This tweet came from an account at Duck Valentine. They seem to be a reporter from IGN and stuff. It's really, really cool. They had an interesting tweet that kind of resonated with me, which was, quote, been thinking lately about how when I was growing up, I perceived Xbox as this really edgy, masculine, aggressively gamer brand. Never ever felt it was for me. It is, stars wild, how they've managed to 180 their messaging so thoroughly to become the, quote, gaming's for everyone folks. And I think that resonated with me because the Xbox to me, as I was growing up through this time period of the early 2000s and kind of understanding my place, what I felt to be my place in gaming, the Xbox was intimidating to me. It felt like a serious gamer thing for like serious gamers, which in my mind was mostly dudes, mostly men. And so I gotta say, as I was kind of leafing through GamePro from January 2000, I was also kind of struck by the advertising that I was seeing there. So I'll include a picture of one advertisement in particular that really stuck out to me from this GamePro magazine. And let me pull it up here so I can view it. And it stuck out to me because, you know, if you're a woman viewing this, if you're a woman viewing GamePro magazine and viewing the advertisements and kind of taking in the entire picture of this magazine, like, what are you seeing? My question is, what were you looking at and how was it possibly describing to you your place in video games at the time? So looking at this screenshot, and how it stood out to me, it is for ebworld.com, electronics boutique, AOL keyword ebworld. In this advertisement that I'm viewing right now, the tagline is, "Know you're gonna score." And what you're seeing is basically you are the point of view of the computer monitor or the TV monitor. You're seeing a guy who looks very 1999. He's got like bleached hair. He has like a cool like chain on. He's using a joystick and he's also in front of a keyboard and mouse. But he's smiling. Behind him is a woman seductively leaning over a chair, you know, wearing these killer red high heels, just looking like a super hot woman in the background. And the tagline is, "Know you're gonna score." It's a done deal. That hot new release you're drooling over will soon be yours. You just found www.ebworld.com, the planet's most reliable source for games, guides, and accessories at great prices. Blah, 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 blah. Whatever you need, know you're going to score it here. We'd never tease you, man. Very interesting stuff. So viewing that, seeing this in GamePro, I'm like, if I was me as a child reading through this, what would I see myself and my place in here being? What would I think about how I fit into the video game world as a woman? So I decided to get a little academic with it. I don't know if I'll do this every time for every deep dive, but it's something that I lean to because I'm like, there have to be people thinking about this. And of course there were. Most of what I was able to find from like a publication and research perspective was from the mid 2000s to the late 2000s, meaning like 2000 to 2010. It's so hard to say that now because the 2000s is also this entire, you know, millennium words. But I was able to find a few different things and I can kind of parse through them and give my own thoughts on this, as well as some of the abstracts. So a publication I found, really a big overarching one that I thought was interesting, called Video Game Characters and the Socialization of Gender Roles. Young people's perceptions mirror sexist media depictions. This was from Karen E. Dill and Catherine P. Thill. Love that rhymes. This was published in October 2000. The abstract states, video game characters are icons in youth popular culture, but research on their role in gender socialization is rare. A content analysis of images of video game characters from top-selling American gaming magazines showed male characters, 83%, are more likely than female characters, 62%, to be portrayed as aggressive. Female characters are more likely than male characters to be portrayed as sexualized, 60% versus 1%. Scantily clad, 39% versus 8%, and as showing a mix of sex and aggression, 39 versus 1%. A survey of teens confirmed that stereotypes of male characters as aggressive and female characters as sexually objectified physical specimens are held even by non-gamers. Studies are discussed in terms of the role media plays in socializing sexism. So I found that interesting, not only from the perspective of the place that women held in video game advertising and how that was reinforcing sexist stereotypes, but also it's interesting when you think about too that like male characters are aggressive. That's it. Men are aggressive, women are sexualized. Like, that seems to be a lot of the overarching theme of this. Another one I found too was called Shirts versus Skins, Clothing as an Indicator of Gender Role Stereotyping in Video Games. This is from Baron Beasley and Tracy Collins Stanley. It was published online in November 2009. The abstract states, this research uses content analysis to examine the portrayal of women in 47 randomly selected games from the N64, Nintendo 64, and Sony PlayStation console gaming systems. We suggest that video games, similar to other media forms, are sources of information that children and young adults may use to determine what behaviors and attitudes are considered appropriately masculine and feminine. This analysis revealed a significant sex bias in the number of male versus female characters found in the games and among the way in which the male and female characters were dressed. Of the 597 characters coded, only 82, 13.74%, were women. The Nintendo 64 games had the fewest number of female characters, and the majority of the female characters wore clothing that exposed more skin than the male characters. In terms of thinking about aggression and violence, again, I found this study that I thought was interesting. An examination of violence and gender role portrayals in video games, implications for gender socialization and aggressive behavior, from Tracy L. Dietz, published in March 1998, actually. Using content analysis, this research examines the portrayal of women and the use of violent themes in a sample of 33 popular Nintendo and Sega Genesis video games. It's proposed that video games, like other media forms, impact the identity of children. This analysis reveals that traditional gender roles and violence are central to many games in the sample. There were no female characters in 41% of the games with characters. In 28% of these, women were portrayed as sex objects. Nearly 80% of the games included aggression or violence as part of the strategy or object. While 27% of the games contained socially acceptable aggression, nearly half included violence directed specifically at others, and 21% depicted violence directed at women. Very, very interesting stuff. And really, to tie a bow on that in terms of how I'm approaching this thought and this information and this data we're receiving, this last one was interesting. The contribution of peer and media influences to the development of body satisfaction and self-esteem in young girls, a prospective study from Haley Daunt, Marika Tigeman. This was from September 2006. The abstract states, this study aimed to prospectively examine the role of peer and media influences in the development of body satisfaction, parentheses, incorporating the desire for thinness and satisfaction with appearance, and parentheses, in young girls, as well as the relationship between body satisfaction and self-esteem. A sample of 97 girls 5 through 8 years of age, 5 years old through 8 years old, completed individual interviews at time 1 and 1 year later at time 2. Linear panel analysis found that time 1 perception of peers' desire for thinness was temporally antecedent to girls' desire for thinness, appearance satisfaction, and self-esteem 1 year later. In addition, the watching of appearance-focused television programs was temporally antecedent to appearance satisfaction. Girls' desire for thinness was temporally preceding low self-esteem. Thus, as early as school entry, girls appear to already live in a culture in which the peers and the media transmit the thin ideal in a way that negatively influences the development of body image and self-esteem. I found that interesting, not only from the perspective of my place, you know, you can think this growing up, seeing this video gaming world that you're interested in, but you see your place in it is, I am most likely a sex object, scantily clad, and I need to look and appear a certain way to be valid and accepted. And let me say, I'm one of the first people to tell you that there's nothing wrong with being a sexual person. That's super valid, and I support that. But I wonder, too, what this really feels like for the industry for other folks, you know, other folks' experiences in terms of, like, is that the only option? Is the only option you're seeing yourself as a woman in video games is to be an object that is sexualized and needs to look a certain way to be valid and valued? I think it's been interesting to understand how a lot of these things have come to light in recent years. I think there's a little bit more of an emphasis on, you know, providing lots of different examples for different ways that humans can be. There is no one right way to be a man or a woman or a non-binary person. Like, you can kind of express yourself in the way that you want to. But for me, I felt that this was very pervasive and felt very relevant to me growing up and thinking, like, I can't be taken that seriously as a girl or a woman that plays video games, because this is how I have to exist. This is how I have to be to fit into that mold, to find my place in the video game world. And it was intimidating. And it was a huge reason I avoided first-person shooters. I avoided a lot of things because I didn't have a ton of friends that were into gaming the same way that I wanted to be into gaming growing up. That's a huge reason I played most of my multiplayer games like Mario Party alone. I never really had folks that wanted to play those kind of things with me. And I was often intimidated by the types of games that I saw men playing, because I had been conditioned and coded to think, these games aren't for you. You can't play these games. Why would you want to play a football game? You're a woman. You really want to play that? Like, you really want to play a Call of Duty game? You're a woman. And this is not me saying that these stereotypes are right. It's just saying it's interesting to look back 20 years later with this perspective and understand we were being told these things through advertisements, through television, through the narratives of some of these games that we were playing. And that's why I'm so appreciative for a world where we can be more open about these conversations. We can think more critically about what we're consuming in that way, the kind of conversations surrounding games, what the narrative is, what the story is, and what we're being told in that way. So it was interesting to me to find these studies and think about how women were being perceived and also how men were being perceived in these video game worlds. And so that was kind of my own thought for this first deep dive. I wish that I had had more role models that could tell me, like, hey, you're allowed to like what you like. Like, don't let tired gender norms enforce the kind of gaming and the kind of entertainment and content they're interested in. I would love to hear more perspectives on this, though. Like, were you a gamer in the early 2000s? Did you have thoughts about this? Did you experience these things firsthand? What were you thinking? And thinking back critically on your own life, how do you see the way you approach yourself, your self-esteem, how you fit into the world? How do you see that fitting into what we were told from video games? Let me know. I'm very curious. The reason I'm big into nostalgia and big into connecting this way is because everybody has their own take on it. Everybody has their own experience and story. We all can play the same video game. We all can read the same magazine, but the way that we're going to approach it is so shaped by our own personal experiences, our upbringing, the times we've had, good and bad. And I'm really interested in that. I'm interested in folks' thoughts and how they're seeing it. So let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about that deep dive. Let me know what you think about the year 2000, specifically January. We're really starting to get into it here. The rumors are interesting. We're going to see how more and more shapes up as the year goes on. But I want to give a huge shout out to, once again, these retro gaming references that I called out to at the beginning of the episode: retromags.com, retrocdn.com, and also pokecommunity.com for their message boards. And thank you, as always, to Wikipedia and archive.org for giving me all the good stuff that I want. And thank you to you, listener, for tuning into the first episode of Today in Gaming Yesterday. Season 1, Episode 1, January 2000. We have so much fun stuff ahead of us. The Pokemon craze has only just started. Xbox rumors are hitting. As I call it, late stage PlayStation 1 games are happening. And the PS2 is on the horizon. What's going to happen to Sega? Who knows? Where will that beautiful Dreamcast end up? Thank you for listening. Thank you so much for being here. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify. You can find this podcast on Twitter at twitter.com/TIGYpod. If you have thoughts, questions, corrections, stuff you want me to check out, email me at TIGYpod@gmail.com. You can also find me, Emma Pearl, at twitch.tv/Emma Pearl. I stream retro gaming content a few days a week. And you can also find me on Twitter at twitter.com/Emma Pearl here. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you have a really good rest of your day, and appreciate you listening and tuning in and getting stoked for season 1. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to be digging into this content with you all and getting more deep dives and more features and more gaming from the 2000s. So thanks again. I don't know. What should I sign off with? I feel like podcasts have sign-offs. I guess if I had one sign-off, I didn't make this up, but I love it and it feels important and appropriate for me. And it's my little 3-phrase mantra. Make sure you work hard, be nice, and have fun. And I will see you next time. See you later.